Special thanks to my patrons for supporting my channel. So, this is where we are now. I haven't spoken that much about generative AI since it became mainstream a couple years ago. I wanted to remain open-minded about ways it could perhaps be genuinely useful to empower creativity. Fast forward to today and I want to beat Microsoft Copilot to death with my bare hooves. But I'll spare you a full rant about how people treat AI like it's an all-powerful god machine when a third grader can outcompete it. Make me a list of US states that do not contain the letter E. Are there any other states that meet this criteria? Instead, I want to focus on its latest intrusion into our lives, the new online series On This Day, 1776. See, this year is the 250th birthday of the United States of America. Time Studios, related to the well-known Time magazine, is celebrating by partnering with filmmaker Darren Aronofsky for a weekly series of shorts all year long. Each week, a short episode will come out depicting a famous event from the American War of Independence on the actual day it occurred. Now, Aronofsky is known for making movies like Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, and more recently The Whale. He's a pedigreed filmmaker. And I think this idea could be kind of neat. I like movies about history, it could be pretty fun. Except for one crucial catch. You see, Darren Aronofsky founded something called Primordial Soup, which is a production company for On This Day 1776. It is a studio devoted to filmmaking using generative AI. So all of these shorts are going to be done using AI. You know what, maybe this is the birthday present our country deserves. So I watched the first 3 episodes just to see what's up. The first episode uploaded to Time's YouTube channel is January 10th Common Sense. Then they uploaded the trailer, and then after that is January 1st, the flag. Okay, let's be nice and start with January 1st, the flag. This short portrays the British monarch rejecting the dissent of the American colonists, leading up to the moment on New Year's Day 1776 when, according to legend, George Washington raised the continental colors on Prospect Hill. First of all, it's always a good sign of confidence when you've preemptively disabled the comments. Only people who've been subscribed for at least a day can comment, and I took this screenshot on the day the video premiered when the first and only comment was, "What the fuck is this shit?" Now here's the thing, at first it seems passable. At first, King George III is giving a speech to Parliament condemning the American colony's resistance. It's a very grave moment, and the slow, heavy camera movements fit that. But then you begin to notice things. You notice how Georgie Boy's enunciation doesn't really fit his vocal energy, it's too subdued.
Put a speedy end to these disorders by the most decisive exertions.
You notice how these back-to-back shots of redcoats riding into the village have almost the exact same background, with the trees and rooftops and fences, creating a bizarre jump cut effect, because they did not care enough to make a unique background layout for the second shot. I generally don't ascribe flaws in media to laziness, it's both inaccurate and unnecessarily mean, but for some reason I do believe the generative AI studio is not putting 100% effort into their work. This man is looking at the events unfolding in a spyglass before lifting his spyglass up and away to the sky? When everyone calls out the colony they're from, the voices and lips don't match. And best of all, as George Washington rears up heroically on his horse, the snow is drifting upwards. Darren Aronofsky, you've done it again. Now, I'll circle back to this episode. I'm not done with it yet, but first, I want to address the next one. January 10th, Common Sense. This short depicts Benjamin Franklin welcoming Thomas Paine to North America and encouraging him to write Common Sense, the pamphlet instrumental in turning the revolt against parliamentary authority into a movement for independence from Britain. Or as the Hollywood Reporter puts it, the country's first viral TikTok. I'm gonna be back for you guys in a moment. But you know, the famous document, Common Sense, addressed to the inhabitants of married? Okay, fine, that was a little glitch. Now it's been corrected to Americo. Darren, buddy, you mind putting a little pride in your work? Yeah, this episode is somehow even worse than the first one. Like, what is this hand motion here? He's holding his fingers open, like the paper should slide out. And you can see here, it's not just a few frames, this is a whole shot of the short. This episode tries to have some artsy transition here, going from Thomas Paine's handwritten script to the metal type of a printing press. But it's executed in a way that feels very unnatural. What's going on with that W there? It grows 2 fat sacks of ink before retracting them back inside. And I don't even know how to describe this over here. And George III hears the words of common sense being read to him. He flies into a rage. A very brief rage, and then he's not anymore. It just feels wrong, stiff, stilted, awkward. And at the very end of the episode, Thomas Paine blows out a candle, the camera finally attempts some kind of motion, and we're reminded why AI doesn't do that a whole lot. I can't put my finger on it, but this just looks and feels off. Generative AI struggles with replicating accurate parallax when things move closer or farther away, when there's anything more complex than a straight side-to-side trucking shot. In other words, it has trouble simulating basic reality. Audiences were turned off by the uncanny motion capture effects of the Polar Express and Robert Zemeckis' A Christmas Carol. What convinced Aronofsky in time that this would be well received? Finally, let's talk about the most recent episode, January 26th, The Guns of Ticonderoga. This short depicts the bookseller Henry Knox leading an expedition to drag cannons through the treacherous upstate New York winter, all to help the Continental forces win the siege of Boston. Honestly, I'm going to sprint through this one. You might have thought to yourself by now, the editing for this video seems off. A lot of weirdly quick cuts. That's not me, that's the series. It's actually edited like that.
They'll never make it. We all know it. Probably already dead, buried under the snow.
A fool's journey.
Putting our trust in that bookseller was complete folly.
We're going to need a new plan immediately.
You've probably also noticed by now, there's a lot of shots of people from behind. I'm already tired of it. I'm already tired of people talking off screen as very uninteresting things happen. It's already getting dull at this point, and we've barely reached 12 minutes of footage across the entire series. They can't manage to generate cannons falling into the water, so we see ice cracking, cut away, and then back to the gun submerged. It looks really cheap. Like, if this wasn't AI generated, I would still say it looks embarrassingly bad. Also, I love the way the shadow just does not match the horseback rider here. $1.6 trillion, and this is the best we can do with AI technology? Oh, and near the end, Knox scales a hill and sees how much further he needs to go. In the short, does a dolly zoom. You know, that fancy trick where a camera zooms in on something while everything else around it looks like it's getting further away. But again, AI has trouble with dynamic camera movements, so Henry Knox's face just looks like it melts and deforms. It's so uncanny. Enough of picking the episodes apart individually though. I want to talk about them all as a single entity, looking at its overall quality. And here's the thing. Everything I've mentioned so far, these are ultimately errors. And generative AI is getting better and better at filtering out errors. Granted, it's a little embarrassing that this far into the AI boom it's still making snowfall up, but everyone's got the right number of fingers as far as I bothered to check. Beyond the errors that are fun to point and laugh at, I do think On This Day 1776 does show off the potential of AI-powered filmmaking. That is to say, not a lot. Because even if this shadow looked correct, even if this pamphlet didn't have 2 different typos on it, even if this snow was falling in the right direction, even if these episodes had no outright errors, they're just not well made. Like I said, the very beginning of the first episode, it's able to get away with it because it's taking place in a very stiff and stuffy environment. And then, everything else in the shorts ends up being stiff. It's the Gal Gadot effect. She was a great actress for Wonder Woman, who's this awkward fish out of water character who doesn't know how to act around people. And then it turned out that's just her one mode. When you're watching these shorts, notice how often it'll have to cut away, often in the middle of someone speaking.
Proper artillery placed at a strategic height above the opposing forces. This will change the balance of power and provide the decisive action you seek, General.
The compositions will rarely have more than one subject in the frame. They often will only show people from behind, and they move really slowly. It's got a real Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon energy. Actually, okay, that might be a bit far. At least Zack Snyder actually made Rebel Moon. I can't believe this. I'm praising Rebel Moon. Look what you made me do, Darren. I feel like there are so many shots here that should be obvious. You would think in the iconic raising of a rebellious flag on Prospect Hill, we get a shot of the British looking at it in the distance, perhaps. Here, let me show you what I mean. You can have it framed so they're looking up at it, like it's a powerful symbol they're afraid of. Or perhaps they're up here in the corner and looking down at a humble beginning of something that's going to grow out of control. This should be an evocative moment, but AI doesn't understand those finer points. For all the billions we're feeding into this technology, it still cannot understand how to actually communicate an emotion to an audience. I don't think Darren Aronofsky is a particularly great filmmaker, but he's got a pedigree to him, and it still came out feeling so bland. Honestly, I find it hilarious how much the trade magazines are trying to pump this up. The Hollywood Reporter, I said I was coming back for you, said the new series was intriguing and provocative. The use of AI to reconstruct lavish historical scenes, allowing it to take the place of expensive and often prohibitive physical production. Lavish? You call this lavish? Go watch Crimson Peak and then come back and tell me about Lavish. Now that movie was made by a director who actually gives a shit. I also love this blatant contradiction, with Time Studios president saying, "This project is a glimpse at what thoughtful, creative, artist-led use of AI can look like. Not replacing craft, but expanding what's possible, and allowing storytellers to go places they simply couldn't before." Which contradicts a previous point in the article explicitly celebrating that it could replace physical production. And by the way, Ben, what do you mean, allowing storytellers to go places they simply couldn't before? There have been many productions that take place during the American War for Independence. People recreate the battles in period-accurate wear for fun. Oh, but there's one part here I do agree with. The episodes could also help answer a compelling question. Could an AI model, trained on a wide raft of historical materials, capture the essence of a time and its personalities better than an individual flesh and blood reconstruction? Oh, trust me, they've answered the question all right. This whole debacle only solidifies to me that this AI craze is out of control. It's a shame because I do believe recent advances in artificial intelligence could have very positive uses. New models trained in pattern recognition have enabled breakthroughs in medicine, for example, and I think even large language models could have utility as a way to archive and search for information. The problem is that careful and thoughtful implementation doesn't make investors happy. That's why Microsoft is gleefully making their operating systems worse. That's why Google is making their search results worse. That's why across the board in 1,000 little cuts, quality of life is slowly getting worse as humans are replaced with mechanical mimics that aren't designed to do 99% of the tasks investors are asking them to do. Why? Because it's just a little cheaper to offer a barely tolerable experience than to offer a good one. You know how it's impossible to turn off these AI assistants in almost every service they pop up in? I'm just saying, Apple didn't need to force people to buy an iPhone when it first came out. They made something good that people wanted to own. But again, maybe this is an appropriate tribute to the United States history given our current times. A century-old magazine, an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, unite to commemorate a quarter millennium with a week-by-week recreation of the most iconic moments in this genuinely exciting chapter of history. But, you know, they don't want to spend that much money or time on it. Who cares if the front page of Thomas Paine's Common Sense is misspelled? Just don't pay attention to it. Oh, and by the way, this series is brought to us by Salesforce. Happy fucking birthday, America.